My husband, ignoring my objections, insisted on adopting his cousin's son, who was a murderer. I did my best to raise him right and finally got him to become a top student. But he teamed up with his mom, who abandoned him, to poison me. He said my kindness was just for show, and I confined him so much that he had no freedom and wished I would die a long time ago. I was reborn to the day my husband first discussed adopting him with me. I never thought I'd die at the hands of the child I raised. That weekend, he said he wanted to cook a meal for me. I was so happy, thinking the kid had finally grown up and I could enjoy the blessing of having a child. But after just 3 bites, I collapsed to the floor. Holding my chest, I felt the paralyzing pain in my heart. I thought it was a sudden heart attack and, forcing myself through the pain, told Mike to call 911 quickly. Instead, Mike stared at me with a sinister smile, as if he was looking at a dead person. "Mom, do you know why you have a heart attack? The octopus you just ate was laced with deadly poison from a blue-ringed octopus. Just 1 bite can kill you. Better yet, it mimics a heart attack, so everyone will think you just had a sudden heart attack." I looked at him with pain and heartbreak, not understanding why he would do this to me. But my will to live made me grab his pant leg, begging him to save me for the sake of the years I spent raising him. Mike kicked me away with cold indifference, like kicking a dead dog. "Raised me? How dare you say you raised me? You only did it for show. From when I was little, you controlled everything about me, pushing me to excel for your own pride. If I hadn't gotten into college, would you still treat me like your biological son? You say I'm like your kid, but you bought iPhones for your daughter and yourself, not for me. Why should your mom's house only go to your daughter and not me? You're biased and cruel, pretending to be a saintly mother. It's disgusting. I've long hoped for your death." The iPhone he mentioned was something my daughter bought herself with money she earned from tutoring. For my birthday, she gave me one. I considered letting Mike use it but worried that it would disappoint my daughter since it was a gift, so I kept it. I even explained this to Mike, and he said he wouldn't mind since it was a gesture from his sister. As for the house, it was my mom's, and she left it to my daughter in her will. After adopting Mike, my daughter went from being an only child to having a brother, sharing resources. But she was mature, never giving me trouble. My mom, feeling for my daughter, left her house to her granddaughter. But this, too, made Mike bitter. I felt deep pain and regret, but the poison numbed me, silencing my voice. Meanwhile, Mike continued his tirade against me. "You don't even know, do you? My mom's back. She's your husband's first love, and it was her who asked him to adopt me. Once she marries him, everything at home will be mine. Your daughter won't take anything when she leaves. But I'll put on a morning show for you, still gotta keep up appearances for others." I closed my eyes in bitter resignation. Mike casually cleaned up the poisoned octopus and called his mom to report my death. His face brimmed with satisfaction as he called that woman, gone for years, Mom, and said, "Mom, just wait to marry in. That dead woman is gone." Only then did he call for help. The ambulance came, and the doctors pronounced my death on the spot. My husband Eric cried but quickly arranged for my cremation without waiting for my daughter to see me one last time. Only my daughter found my death suspicious and insisted on calling the police. But my body was already cremated, and evidence destroyed. Plus, Eric claimed she was jealous of Mike, and it was nothing but baseless accusations. With no evidence, the police deemed it a family dispute and moved on. That night, Eric took out his computer and found records of Mike's dealings with blue-ringed octopus. He demanded to know how I died. Mike cried at his feet, claiming it was momentary insanity. He said he did it all because he felt Eric was unfairly treated, hinting that I was the boss at home, making Eric suffer. He knew Eric's feelings for his biological mother, and without my death, they'd never be together. Eric's gaze softened as Mike spoke. At that, his long-lost mom appeared, a graceful lady placing her hand on Eric's, crying to evoke pity. "It's all my fault, not the child's. I involved him in my troubles. When I was desperate, I begged him to adopt Mike. He and I will remember his kindness forever. You're generous enough to raise my child. His life is essentially yours. If you surrender him, it's just what he deserves. But if he's ruined, it might reflect badly on you. People might gossip and distrust your family. Your career is thriving, with a perfect family, people envy that. Everyone knows you adopted Mike for charity, but if word spreads that he killed his aunt, how would it reflect on you and her? People might speculate about what she did to drive him to murder. Such stories could circulate at work, hindering your advancement, and Mike couldn't compensate for that. My cousin-in-law has passed away. Once someone is gone, there's no bringing them back, but we still have to keep living. If you forgive Mike, I'll serve you like an ox or horse for the rest of my life. As she spoke, her hand landed on my husband's hand, and she leaned into his arms. Mike, being tactful, left the room and gave them privacy. Soon enough, they were tangled together on the bed. My soul floated above, watching it all, filled with cold despair. Mike is the son of one of my husband's distant relatives. Years ago, his dad was convicted of robbery and murder, and sentenced to death. His mom took off, leaving him behind. His grandma, battling cancer, entrusted him to my husband before she died. Initially, I was against adopting him. But I couldn't resist my husband's moral arguments and the pressure from our relatives. My husband said Mike was pitiful, and if we did nothing, he'd end up in an orphanage. He also said his aunt had been good to him when he was young, and now he couldn't turn his back on her dying wish. If I didn't agree to adopt, he said he would divorce me and raise the kid on his own. He seemed so earnest, and with everyone else's persuasion saying the kid would be like our own, I finally agreed to adoption. Little did I know that Eric, my husband, and Mike's mom used to be involved romantically. Adopting Mike wasn't about repaying his aunt, it was about repaying his ex-girlfriend. Clueless, I devoted myself to Mike, thinking that since we took him in, we had to be responsible. For years, I invested in him, focusing on his academics and character, teaching him about life. When he first came to us at 6, he hadn't even started first grade. Whether it was grandma's coddling or bad genetics, Mike was initially introverted and violent. He once fought with a classmate and used a compass to poke the other kid's eye, nearly causing blindness. I apologized, paid for damages, then gave him a good scolding. He cried and swore not to do it again. But I took him to a psychologist and enrolled him in therapy, fearing he'd turn out like his father. The doctor said he was overly energetic, prone to mischief if not channeled properly. Following their advice, I signed him up for football and badminton classes. Every day, rain or shine, I took him to practice. It seemed to work, and he stopped getting into trouble. Life was finally normal. Over the years, I spent more time and effort on him than on my own daughter. For 12 years, I raised him, got him into a good school, thinking I could finally breathe easy. Little did I know, he hated me all along. My efforts were no match for the bad blood running in his veins. I had raised a thankless ingrate. After my death, I worry that my daughter will be left with nothing. Meanwhile, Mike was plotting with his mom next door on how to snatch all the inheritance, squeezing my daughter out. My heart shattered. I neglected my own daughter to raise Mike. Unlike him, she was always understanding and kind, never causing me trouble. She knew about Mike's past and treated him well. Though only 3 months older, she never envied my attention on him. She gladly shared whenever there was something good. They attended the same schools, and my daughter often apologized on Mike's behalf, smoothing over his messes. Yet, despite her kindness, after causing my death, Mike plans to kick her out. Finally, when I heard Mike's plan to use a blue-ringed octopus on my daughter, rage consumed me and I was reborn. I found myself back when Eric talked about divorce. Eric, looking younger, stared at me with a troubled face. Just like before, he claimed he understood the burden of raising a non-blood child and wouldn't force me. If I couldn't accept it, we'd divorce. I could take our daughter, he didn't care about the house or savings, taking all the blame. Eric looked innocent, pleading with those charming eyes, so deceiving in their act. Remembering everything from before, I fought the urge to slap him, cut him off coldly. Fine, let's divorce. Eric froze in shock. While he was stuck, I continued. Our daughter stays with me. I bought the house, so it's mine. We split the savings so you won't feel cheated. Eric finally realized I was serious, his face stiff. Finally, he found his voice, accused me of joking. He claimed I wasn't heartless. I replied with a smirk, I'm not interested in raising a murderer's kid. If you want him, best of luck. Before I could finish, his facade cracked. Angry, he insulted me for lacking compassion. Lily, after all these years together. So cold-hearted. My cousin did wrong, but Mike is innocent. He looked down on me from his moral high ground, judgment in his eyes. But I wasn't the same as before. Unbothered, I simply smiled and nodded, asking when we'd divorce. Seeing I wasn't backing down, Eric slammed the door on his way out. On the second day, I woke up to find Eric had brought Mike into our home without a word. Mike looked pitiful, calling me aunt with teary eyes, holding onto my coat saying he was a good boy and begging me to take him in. Before I could say anything, Mike kneeled down, sobbing, saying he wouldn't go to the orphanage because he wasn't an orphan and begged not to be sent there. It was just like the previous life. Back then, seeing Mike so pitiful, I felt a pang of sympathy and ended up agreeing to adopt him. Who would have thought he'd be such an acting prodigy at such a young age? I wonder how long he rehearsed this scene in private. I'm sure they were looking forward to my performance too. So, I slowly squatted down, placed my hand on Mike's head, and looked into his little eyes. Good kid, you're not an orphan, don't you still have a mom? Your dad may be gone, but you have your uncle. Your uncle can be your dad from now on. At that moment, both Mike and Eric flashed joyful smiles. I also smiled with them, but I don't want to be the mom of a murderer's son. I'm divorcing your uncle so he can find you a good mom. How about that? In the next second, Eric's smile froze on his lips, like a clown unable to retract his grin. He accused me of trying to drive Mike to death. Adopting a child was just adding another pair of chopsticks at the table. He said I used to be kind, so why was I being so cruel now? Acting dumb, I looked at him. Eric, I never said you couldn't adopt him. I even agreed to divorce you. What more do you want? I thrust a chocolate bar into little Mike's hand and said, Sweetheart, whether you have a home or not depends on your uncle, not me. He's related by blood to your dad and grandma, and I bet no one will treat you better than him. I not only agree to him adopting you, but I also support him dedicating all his energy to your education and future. You two are the closest in the world. One day when your uncle grows old, you'll take care of him, right? Silly boy, hurry and call your uncle Dad. Mike was only 6, and he listened to me, first puzzled, then ran to Eric, clutching his leg tightly, bawling, Dad, I'll care for you till the end, don't abandon me. Eric never saw this coming and only wanted to flee with Mike clinging to him. But Mike wouldn't let go, clinging to him as his sole hope. While they were tangled up, I made my exit swiftly. Because I insisted on the divorce, Eric had his relatives persuade me otherwise. Every relative who tried to persuade me got the same reply. If adopting is so good, why don't you adopt Mike yourself? Or how about this, gather $200,000 for me, and I'll raise him happily. No money? No effort? Then why are you complaining? After a few such exchanges, the relatives started persuading Eric to divorce this shrew. But Eric, perhaps believing a fool like me was hard to find, refused to divorce and even went to my work to have my boss talk to me. My boss, legs crossed, asked, You're a teacher, you should have compassion for all. How can you refuse to adopt a child just because he's a murderer's kid? How can you be a moral example? I laughed at his nerve and asked directly how much Eric paid him to guilt-trip me. Ignorantly convincing people to adopt can lead to bad karma. Before my boss could get mad, I pulled out the QQ chat logs between Eric and Mike's mom, Cindy, which I had printed long ago and threw them in his face. Open your damn eyes and see what kind of scum Eric really is. The kid's mom is still alive, Eric's ex-girlfriend. When Eric got into college, he dumped her. She got mad and married his cousin. It's messier than a trashy soap opera. Her husband passed, she left freely, and expected Eric to raise her son. Eric agreed so eagerly, suspiciously. Whose child is this anyway? I refuse to care for my husband's ex-lovers and a murderer's cousin's son. Where am I wrong? Amidst the uproar, Eric accused me of slander. I chuckled coldly, pulling out the intimate photos I'd secretly taken of him and Cindy these days. You wanna adopt a kid? You're trying to adopt his mom. The look on Eric's face was priceless. I slapped the photos on his face and told him that now, if we divorced, the gossip would be confined to our workplace. If he refused, I wouldn't hesitate to involve the media so the whole city could know how I refused to adopt my husband's exes and a murderer cousin's kid. Let's see who gets the scandal. Just like that, Eric had no choice but to divorce me. As we left the civil affairs office that day, he gritted his teeth. I never thought you could be like this, really misjudged you before. I didn't even spare him a glance. Mad that you didn't get your way? I never thought you could be such a scumbag either. Eric stomped off, face pale. After the divorce, I realized how much time and money I actually had without Eric and Mike around. In a past life, I thought I had it all, a perfect family. In reality, Eric often used work as an excuse to avoid household matters. Raising 2 kids and working left me exhausted, especially when Mike was a handful. And yet, Eric often ruined everything. Whenever I try to spruce up the house, maybe by some flowers or a potted plant, he gives me a lecture. His motto is, we have 2 kids, so we should save money wherever we can. It has to be spent on the essentials. Now, I've got plenty of time to spend with my daughter Sunny and to develop myself. Thanks to a sort of rebirth, after angrily standing up to my boss one day, I decided to quit and start an education training class. I want to make some serious money while it's still allowed and save up for my daughter. In this lifetime, I'm going to make up to Sunny for everything I couldn't give her before. While I was busy starting my business, Eric and Cindy officially got together. I heard she's very attentive, looking after Eric quite well. Eric's been saying everywhere how he's finally experiencing the joys of being a man. I'm not even mad about it. I just hope they stick together and don't end up bothering anyone else. After the divorce, Eric was supposed to visit his daughter once a week. However, this visiting schedule kept getting extended. The last time he came was 3 months ago. Honestly, that's fine by me. The less contact Sunny has with someone like Mike, the safer she is. Sunny is still young, so sometimes she misses her dad. So, whenever Eric wants to take her out, I don't stop him. It didn't occur to me that on this particular day, Sunny left happily with Eric but returned pouting. She said Eric is getting married, and the bride is Mike's mom. Eric even wants Sunny and Mike to be the flower girl and boy at the wedding. Sunny was crying, saying she doesn't want to be her dad's flower girl or call Cindy mom. She doesn't like Mike either. That's when I found out Eric was forcing Sunny to call Cindy mom. Sunny refused to. Cindy would then cry, saying she was unworthy and asking Eric not to make it hard for the kid. Eric scolded Sunny to be polite. My daughter broke down crying, and then Mike pushed her, telling her that her mom was a wicked woman and she was no better. I was furious, and on the phone, I cursed Eric and his ancestors. Making my daughter call her mom? How shameless. I won't hesitate to crash their wedding and spill the tea about their little secret if Eric dares approach Sunny again. This time, he shut up quickly. I thought that was the end of it and that, from now on, my daughter and I wouldn't cross paths with Eric's new family. Until I got a call from the school saying my daughter had poked Mike's eye. When I got to the hospital, Eric was holding my daughter's wrist, questioning the teacher how someone like that could still be a model student. The teacher tried to make him let go, but Eric claimed he was Sunny's dad, so it was his right to discipline her. I couldn't take it anymore. I rushed over and swung my bag at Eric's head. Eric let go of my daughter's wrist in pain. Seeing me, my daughter ran into my arms, crying her eyes out. As I comforted her, I politely asked the teacher what had happened. I couldn't believe my daughter would do such a thing. The teacher hesitated, saying she didn't believe Sunny was the culprit either. But the incident happened so quickly that she didn't have time to understand the full picture. Right now, all they knew was that the scuffle between Sunny and Mike happened in a blind spot of the surveillance cameras. The cameras caught Mike covering his bleeding eye and running away, while Sunny was seen chasing him with a compass. Just then, the surgery room doors opened, and Mike was wheeled out. His face was bloody, his left eye covered in gauze. Cindy was following him, sobbing. The doctor soon came out, too. The doctor said Mike's left eye wasn't blind, but there was a long cut around it. It was so close, the boy could have been blinded. As a doctor, he couldn't judge who was at fault. He just wanted to add that they were really lucky this time. Otherwise, both families would regret this incident for life. Hearing the doctor side with him, Mike got all cocky again. He shouted to call the cops and have them arrest my daughter, throwing her in juvenile detention. Seeing Mike's arrogance made my daughter cry again. To calm her down and to get to the truth, I took her to a corner of the hallway. "Sweetie, can you tell me what really happened? No matter what, I'll find a way to help you." I held my daughter's hand, patiently asking her. She nodded gently. "Did you poke Mike's eye?" I hoped she'd shake her head, but she nodded. My heart sank, but I had to find out why. "My dear, I know you must have had a reason, right? Can you tell me why you did it? Did Mike bully you first?" My daughter nodded, tears streaming down as she told me the whole story. Apparently, that morning during the flag-raising ceremony, the principal announced the names of the students who got district-level academic awards. Sunny was the only one from the second grade. It was supposed to be a happy occasion, so a lot of classmates and teachers congratulated her. But as they were walking back to the classrooms, Mike suddenly popped up next to Sunny and said loudly, "What's the use of being an honor student? Sunny's dad abandoned her." He went on to say that Sunny's parents divorced because her mom was a nasty woman, and her dad left to get away from her mom's troublemaking ways. He even claimed Sunny's mom didn't leave the school on her own but was fired for causing havoc everywhere. And since her mom was a bad woman, he said Sunny must be bad too, and it wasn't fair for the school to award her. As Sunny recounted these details, my daughter was shaking slightly. I knew my Sunny was too honest and naive to handle such slander. Meanwhile, Mike was vile enough to know exactly how to mess with someone's head. "So, you stabbed his eye?" I asked. Unexpectedly, Sunny shook her head. She said there were a lot of classmates around at the time. Although they were initially intimidated by Mike's words, it wasn't long before some classmates stood up for Sunny. Some said whether Sunny's parents were divorced or if her dad favored her had nothing to do with her being a good student. Others pointed out Mike's usual behavior, saying he was a lazy bum and shouldn't be trusted, calling him a liar outright. Finally, that morning, my daughter returned to class with several good friends protecting her. But Mike wouldn't let it go. That afternoon, he cornered my daughter when she went to get water alone. The compass that injured Mike's eye was actually Mike's. He was mad that bullying her that morning didn't go as planned. He said if it weren't for the crowd, he wouldn't have let her get away. This time, he explicitly told my daughter he didn't like her and wanted to beat her up. He even told her to call him brother if she didn't want to get hit. My daughter didn't want to fight and warned him to back off. But when she tried to leave, Mike blocked her, barking at her not to look at him with disdain or else he'd blind her. Eventually, they got into it. Mike dragged her to a spot where the security cameras couldn't see and pulled out the compass to stab her eye. He thought my daughter was just a delicate little girl, but after my rebirth, I was cautious. Drawing from my past life's experience, I enrolled her in fencing and Muay Thai classes in case she ever faced Mike. By then, she'd been in those classes for over 6 months, so handling Mike was easy. In the moment he moved to stab her, my daughter grabbed the compass. Amidst his constant insults, she stabbed it into his eye. "Mom, I just wanted to scare him, but I didn't expect it to actually hit him, my daughter admitted, still trembling, which broke my heart. I cried, hugging her. Mike started this. You were protecting yourself. It's self-defense. I'm just thankful it was him that got hurt, not you. Sweetheart, whether it's Mike or anyone else, if they try to hurt you, fight back. Even if it means, really hurt them, I assured her. When we returned to the homeroom teacher, Eric was still yelling, threatening to call the cops. I ignored him and instead emphasized to the teacher that Mike started it and my daughter acted in self-defense. Mike shouted vile things at Sunny, while Eric kept going on about how poorly he thought I'd raised her, claiming she had no femininity, even saying she had violent tendencies for using a compass like that. Cindy, meanwhile, was crying on and off, adding to the drama with her twisted versions of the story. Unable to bear it any longer, I slapped Cindy and Eric right there in front of the teacher. I can deal with trash like you myself. No need for my daughter to even look at you, I declared. Seeing that, Eric became furious, pointing at the security camera in the hallway. It's all recorded. When the cops get here, let's see how you deny it. But I had noticed the camera too, so I calmly told Eric, go ahead, call the police. I'll show them all your dirty deeds. Tell them how you abandoned your family for your murderer son, trying to frame your own daughter. Oh, and I'll print flyers for your wedding too, see how you like the spotlight. I had these words ready before I slapped them, knowing Eric valued his reputation. As expected, he caved almost immediately. Seizing the moment, I demanded Mike apologize to my daughter. Wasn't he the one who wanted her to bow to him and call him brother? Now it was time for him to get a taste of his own medicine. Mike refused, looking to Cindy for help. But Cindy just blinked, teary-eyed, and glanced at Eric. They were both disappointed because Eric, desperate to keep his reputation intact, coaxed Mike into apologizing. Eventually, under pressure, Mike kneeled and apologized. But as he stood up, I saw unmistakable rage in his right eye. That look, I recognized it well. Mike had always been a backstabber, ready to turn on anyone, and someday, he'd likely target Eric too. Not long after that, Eric and Cindy had their wedding. To keep up appearances, I heard it was a pretty big affair. Initially, Eric was seen as a saint for supposedly adopting Mike. But after our divorce, and his quick reunion with Mike's real mom, everyone figured out the truth. Eric went from being a saint to the sleazy villain who made moves on a relative's wife. People might not say it out loud, but they're secretly mocking him to no end. Some folks even came to me, digging for dirt on why I divorced Eric and asking when he and Cindy started sneaking around. I mean, there's no way I'm passing up on such an opportunity, right? With tears in my eyes, I said, he's still the father of my child, so it's tough for me to say much. But, you know, if I could make things work, would I really choose divorce? The truth is, he treated me really badly. I knew how to spin the perfect rumor. You have to leave some parts out, give the gossipers something to imagine. The woman who asked me looked at me with so much sympathy, patting my hand as she comforted me, you've suffered so much. Next thing I knew, there was this wild rumor going around that Eric and Cindy were together long before, even before her cousin committed a crime. They were caught red-handed by him, and he went down that path of crime out of sheer frustration. I wonder how Eric feels about being blamed for the cousin's crime, or how Mike feels knowing his dad and his mom are seen as the trigger for him becoming a criminal. Honestly, I'm kind of looking forward to their reactions. But right now, I have more pressing things to deal with. What happened before made me realize that Mike is like a ticking time bomb, ready to explode at any moment. I couldn't let my daughter live under the same roof with him anymore. So, I transferred her to a private school in town with top-notch resources. Sure, it's pricier than public school, but everything from facilities to teachers is way better. Most importantly, the food's great and the teachers are responsible. She can eat 3 meals there and do her homework too, which frees me up to focus on my career. Eric was furious when he found out. He called me, implying he couldn't afford her tuition, and told me not to stretch beyond my means. He even criticized me for quitting my job. I know my remarriage made you uncomfortable. You're always playing this competition game, trying to outdo me through your own ventures or our child's success. But hey, know your limits. Are you even cut out for business? Good kids will shine anywhere, but Sunny is just an ordinary girl, and shelling out so much for a top school won't make her excel academically. In a past life, Eric would always belittle Sunny. When Sunny aced a test, he'd say girls can't sustain excellence. If Mike got 5th place, he'd praise him, saying he had a bright future. This time, I tore into him, your brain's like a straight pipe filled with junk. You think our daughter would turn out like you? Can't she have a genetic upgrade and scrub out your crappy genes? Absolute nonsense. I decided to cut ties between Sunny and this jerk, separating his bad genes from her completely. From now on, she won't rely on his money, and she's taking my last name. He shouldn't expect any help from her as he ages. Worried he might back out, I quickly drafted a statement severing their relationship, got Eric to sign it at work that afternoon. He signed without hesitation, warning me not to regret it. I spat at him, gave him a resounding ugh. I know legally it means nothing, but supporting someone monthly is different from offering a substantial inheritance. It's sort of my way of eliminating that future concern for my daughter. Life was stable for a few years after that. Sunny excelled in school, even better than in a past life. Besides fencing, she picked up skiing and badminton, respecting her interests. She grew a bit taller too, likely from all the sports. Meanwhile, due to smart investments, my business grew rapidly. When Sunny was 16, she got into a prestigious high school with 3rd place citywide, and my new villa was ready to move into. We threw a celebration party at a restaurant and ran into Eric's sister-in-law. This lady once urged me to adopt Mike. I didn't want to engage, but she was so impressed seeing Sunny, praising how I dodged a bullet by divorcing Eric and not adopting Mike. From her, I learned about my ex and Mike's family situation. Without my influence this time, Mike's mom, Cindy, spoiled him rotten. She fed him junk he loved, fried chicken, soda, braised pork, total calorie bombs. He became quite the chubby guy, 150 pounds at just 5 feet tall. Naturally violent, Mike would lash out at classmates. His mom always sided with him, claiming others bullied Mike for not having a dad. Eric bought into it, doing whatever to fix Mike's messes, turning him into a senseless bully. Academically, Mike was a disaster. Not only did he miss out on a top high school, he couldn't even get into an average one. Eric was desperately pulling strings for his schooling. Calling him a bully is flattering, he's more of a little tyrant. I thought he was pitiful, losing a dad so young. Now I see lousy genetics don't skip a beat, with his dad a murderer, Mike's a little criminal in the making. These days, any time the topic of Eric comes up with family or friends, they all say he's a big fool. Who else would abandon a great kid like Sunny to raise someone else's kid? Seriously, what knocked sense out of his head? Still, Eric is Sunny's dad, and half of what he earns should be for her. If you ever get the chance, try to convince him. He should save some for himself and not spend everything on someone else's kid. I quickly cut her off, letting her know Eric already signed an agreement to sever his relationship with Sunny. Sunny even changed her last name, and we don't want any of Eric's money. Her jaw literally dropped, possibly because she never imagined Eric would go to such great lengths. I smirked and asked her why she doesn't have a chat with Eric herself. She waved her hands dismissively. Oh please, he ditched his own daughter for some hussy, why would he listen to us? When Eric's kid hurt mine during the new year, Eric actually took that kid's side. It was unbelievable. Listening to her all outraged, I almost couldn't keep a straight face. It was too satisfying seeing this backfire on Eric. Not long after Sunny's graduation celebration, Eric had the nerve to show up. Honestly, when I saw him downstairs at my office, I barely recognized him. In just a few years, he looked so worn out and aged. Eric had packed on at least 30 extra pounds since I last saw him, and his hair was receding into a bald patch. Staring at this chubby, balding guy, I couldn't help but think Cindy might do well at a pig farm. She'd make a killing. Carrying some cheap doll he probably got from a wholesale market, he asked me where Sunny was, saying he missed her. Without hesitation, I tossed the doll in the trash and called him out. If you miss your daughter, why aren't you at her school? Why drop by my office instead? And a $10 gift? Clearly, your missing doesn't cost much. Despite my sarcasm, Jason maintained his awkward smile, scratching his balding head. Listen to you, he said. Sunny's my daughter. If you hadn't pushed me back then, I'd never have left her. Believe it or not, I've always thought about my girl. That's why I'm here. To be honest, that kid Mike let me down. He didn't even get into high school, so I'm not betting on him. I see it now, there's no one like your own child. And to make up for not being there for Sunny, I've been thinking, maybe I could trade my big house for that small one we divided during our divorce. Watching Eric's mouth flap, I thought, this guy never fails to amaze. Back when, that little house was set for demolition with no announcement. Because of Eric's job, he got insider information. The deal for the house, in the past, secured an equal-sized replacement and a hefty payout, plus the area was set to become a thriving hub, skyrocketing in value. Eric wanted to leverage this info gap to trade his awful location house for ours, set to be developed. What a sloppy scam. I spit straight in his face and told him to get lost. I mocked him for being attached to Cindy's apron strings. To think he would sabotage his own daughter for a gutter-level woman and her bastard son. I told him, maybe instead of scheming against his own daughter, he should teach his stepson some manners. He should look himself in the mirror before thinking about snatching my girl's stuff. After failing to get what he wanted, Eric went off, saying I needed to think long-term. Don't think earning a few bucks makes you untouchable. Power is what truly matters, he said. I could be head honcho soon. When you need help for Sunny, don't expect me. Laughing, I rang up the secretary to call security. Let's keep the trash out of here from now on, okay? We're an educational institution. Let's keep the air clean. Puffed up with anger, Eric couldn't do anything against the towering security guards. He stormed off, fuming. Right after, I gave my cousin a call, spilling details about Eric's shenanigans, with some extra flair for impact. She's a loudmouth, and she's never liked Eric's lot anyway. Soon, everyone would hear how Eric tried to screw over his own daughter for his stepson. Despite Eric's lack of shame, the thought of more people calling him out felt sweet. Funniest part? While he bragged about becoming a boss, and how someday he'd make Sunny wish she had him back as a dad, news came out that he missed the promotion. Word was Mike got into a fight with some higher-ups kid, which explained why Eric didn't get the job. When my daughter turned 18 that summer, I threw her a big grad party. This time, everyone I could think of was invited. Sunny got into a prestigious university with the top score in the city. I was over the moon and couldn't wait to share my joy with everybody. But guess what? Eric, that unlucky guy, showed up at our grand celebration. It's been 2 years since we last saw him, and he's gotten even fatter and balder. Surprisingly though, he gave Sunny a red envelope with 10,000 yuan in it. Sunny refused to take it, so Eric went around telling everyone that Sunny's success was partly due to his genes, and that he had a part in Sunny's achievement. I threw his envelope into the trash and told everyone that Sunny got where she is today because Eric didn't spend a minute or a dime on her, which left her free to grow up healthy and study hard. Before I could wave him off, the security at the 5-star hotel escorted him out. Still, after Eric left, some busybody uploaded a photo of him at the party claiming her as his daughter, which sparked a wave of local social media jokes. Bloggers, looking to exaggerate for views, called Eric a fool who traded a watermelon for a bomb. Under these viral videos, many self-proclaimed insiders shared exposés about Eric, saying he was borderline crazy and definitely not normal anymore. Among the numerous comments, one even predicted that Eric would meet his end at Mike's hands. Epilogue. For well-known reasons, I closed my company right before the government tightened its educational policies. Through the company's profits, real estate, and Bitcoin investments, I've long since achieved financial freedom. Now that my daughter got into college, I moved to Beijing with her. But thanks to my big-mouthed cousin-in-law, I still occasionally hear about my ex-husband's family's bizarre antics. For instance, Eric paid to get Mike into a third-rate private college, but Mike got expelled for secretly filming girls in the bathroom. Eric finally gave up on Mike and asked Cindy for a divorce. He blamed Mike for ruining his life. Cindy refused, as she had been a housewife for years, entirely dependent on Eric. Without him, she couldn't support herself. In the end, putting herself first, she abandoned her son, suggesting to Eric that they have another child. They secretly began planning for another baby behind Mike's back. I can only imagine how devastated Mike must have been when he found out. It was like in a past life when he fed me to the blue-ringed octopus. This time he fed Eric and his mom. But that wasn't enough for him. After they died, he chopped up their bodies and hid them in the fridge, all while living it up on Eric's money for a while. Eventually, Eric's employer reported him missing, and the police found his dismembered body at the house. The scene was reportedly so horrific that even seasoned detectives were shocked. They quickly caught Mike. In a media interview, he calmly explained his motives for killing Eric and Cindy. He said his real mom was a mistress, Eric was an idiot, and together they drove his real dad to ruin, making him the son of a murderer. He said, "They destroyed my life and even wanted another kid." Yeah, right. I figured I'd just poison them, but I got so mad looking at them that I ended up chopping them up. The guy wasn't even dead yet and got so scared he wet himself. Hilarious. As Mike spoke, he even smiled at the camera, the same smile he had when he hurt me in my past life. But I'm not afraid anymore. I sit in a sun-filled living room, surrounded by life and growth. That dark world of Eric and Mike is long gone. Evil finally met its end, and everything is settled. There couldn't be a better ending than this.